So the first step is to measure the door, make sure we're getting the right door. So you see this door is 35 3/4. That means we're going to get a 36-inch door. And the height is 79 1/4. So that means we're going to get an 80-inch door. And it's 1 3/4 thick. So with the door off, I want to check all the hinges, make sure nothing's loose. I want them flush with the jamb. Check all the screws, make sure nothing's loose. And you have to make sure that you have a threshold and it's actually working. This one looks fine. The threshold has to be higher than the area in which the door swings. This door swings in. So your threshold has to be higher than your floor. What I recommend is put the tape right over the hinge and then go right to the edge of the jamb. So see, we're right there at 36. Then do the same thing in the middle, 36, right there. Same thing on the bottom, for 36 right there. This is 36 inches, and subtract 1/4 inch. So you want your door to be 35 3/4. Now we want to check the height. We're going to put our tape down there on the threshold and run it up. So we're at 79 1/2. Put our tape measure down there on the strike side, 79 1/2. Whatever the longest measurement is from top to bottom, subtract 1/2 inch, and that will be the first cut. So since we're at 79 1/2, we're going to cut the door to 79. Close the hinge, put the tape measure right up against the top of the jamb. Now we're going to drop it down 1/8 inch, and it's 6 5/8. 37 11/16. You drop it down, it's 37 9/16. And we've got 68 11/16. So this will be 68 9/16. And I recommend keeping a pad with you, or at least a post-it note, so you can write these things down so you're not running back and forth, double checking everything. So we take the carpenter's square, push it up against the hinge side, and then push it up against the top jamb until something hits. That rests nice and even along the top. That means our jamb is square, so we do not have to worry about shaping the top of the door. When you're getting ready to shape a door, the first thing you do is shape the top if you have to. Our top is square, so we don't have to. It's exactly 80, so I make a mark here at 79. So when I have to cut 1/4 inch, I use the saw, but I don't try to cut the 1/4 inch perfectly. I cut it a little bit away from the line, cut the whole thing, and then I go back and fine tune it with my planer and make it nice.
Intimidated if you've never used a power planer. The planer playlist has a complete set of lessons to show you how to use a planer like a pro.
So before we take this hinge off, we'll make a mark right here where the edge of the jamb is. Then we trace our hinge. Steady. It's like that. It's like that. Router bit set to the correct depth so it only cuts as deep as this hinge. People ask me about hinge mortising jigs because there are so many different types. Pete, why don't you use a hinge mortising jig? I do, but very rarely because they aren't necessary. This is all going to come out great and you don't need a hinge mortising jig. It's just more stuff you got to carry and more time you got to take setting things up. This is quick and easy and accurate. So I'm at 6 5/8. So I'm just going to put in 2 screws and I use the centering bit. Only 2 because that's all I need to hang it. And if I have to move this hinge, I want to have fresh wood in these holes to move the screw. You don't have to get it all the way down in. I'm going to move it around and get my wedge underneath it. There, now I've got it on the wedge. And you have to get the door open to 90 degrees. Put 1 screw in the bottom first because that's generally all it takes to hold the door. Door's not going anywhere. So this is the first test. And at this point, you always hope it works perfectly, but we're aware that it probably won't. And this is where we figure out what we need to do next. Now look at that gap along the edge. Oh my gosh. I hate to show you this because they never come out that perfect.
When you're doing your first test fit like this, there is always at least one issue. More often there are multiple issues. And the troubleshooting video, part 1, explains what those issues are and the sequence in which you should fix them. So once you've done a test fit, you want to get the top and bottom of the door fit first. You want that 1/8 inch gap on the top of the door and no rubbing. And you want the bottom of the door as close to the floor as possible without rubbing. Then you move to the sides. If the door is rubbing or doesn't fit, you're going to have to plane the door. If the gaps are too big, you may have to manipulate the hinges.
And right there. So now with the door closed, I just transfer those marks over and right to there. I know that the back set is 2 3/8, so I'm going to mark those. So that's where I'm going to drill my locks. You see where we cut those edges so it goes around the weather stripping. So now we'll insert the rubber strip and check our height. So with this thing in place, I got my rubber strip on and it's just sitting on the threshold. I'm just gonna put my pencil in there and make a mark. So that is where the bottom of the door has to be.
You might be thinking, Pete, why are you cutting the door twice? It seems like an extra step. You could cut it perfect the first time, but when you're starting out, I say be cautious. In the locks playlist, and this could be done with the door in place. You do not have to take the door off and take it outside again. I'll just leave it in place and do the locks with the door in place.
Okay, we got our door back on, and now you should have all of your screws in your hinges. Perfect. Some of these fit better than others. And I just tap on it until it hits the threshold. Then I put screws in there. And it's done.